think customer service is absolutely your ability to not only, win a customer once, but it's the second and third and fourth purchase that they make that really lies in the hand of what's that extended and ongoing experience you're giving to your customers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Conversation With, short, insightful discussions with CX leaders and innovators. And today we have a real treat with you, Tiffani Bova. Tiffani, and just to make sure I get all this right, you'll see that I'm checking off my little list here. Tiffani is the Global Growth Evangelist at Salesforce, the author of Wall Street Journal's best-selling book, Growth IQ, which is titled Get Smarter About the Choices That Will Make or Break Your Business. And Bova has been named to the latest Thinkers 50 list of the world's management's top thinkers. So obviously very impressive background. And Tiffani, I only scratched the surface, so you'll have to pardon that. But she's also the host of What's Next with Tiffani Bova, an iTunes best-selling all-time business and management bestseller, and top sales podcast, according to the Top Sales magazine. Today with Tiffani, we'll cover putting the customer at the center of your growth strategy. Tiffani, it's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me, Terrence.
Yeah, we're thrilled. How have you been the past year and a half? How have you been staying occupied?
Oh, it's been obviously a huge transition. 2019, I flew about 275,000 miles, which is about 600,000 kilometers, depending on where you're listening to this in, and gave 100 keynotes on 6 continents. And then, March sort of 12th of 2020, I was in Sydney. I had been there for a couple of weeks doing world tour Salesforce for Sydney. And literally the week before the actual event, we shut it down and went virtual. It was our very first virtual worldwide event that we did. And it was, who knew that then I'd get back on a plane and literally 48 hours, the US would shut down the borders for any international travel. Yeah. So I snuck right back in. But, now I've been, grounded for some 18 months, and I've done probably 5 times as many as I normally do, when I'm out on the road. But it's been a great experience, although I'm itchy to get back on the road.
Yeah, I pick on Fritz, our marketing go-to, who you just met a moment ago. He sent me to San Francisco, and the moment I landed there, the meeting, the conference was canceled. Governor Newsom decided to stop all events, and I got right back on the plane and shot home.
That's kind of what happened.
Yeah. That was my last flight until just recently. So actually, we just started back up on our side. Tiffani, we talk so much about the consumer, right? And obviously all that's changed with the pandemic and of course coming out of the pandemic to a certain extent. But I want to put you in the shoes of a consumer for a moment. Tell us about a memorable experience you've had, either positive or negative, and tell us why it's memorable.
So what's been really interesting over the last 18 months is actually watching how the experience has changed because of the pandemic. And so, something as simple as having my, washing machine service, which normally was like, okay, we'll be there between, noon and 5 or 8 and noon, or we'll be there sometime on Tuesday, kind of a thing, to really switching that around and spending a lot more time communicating with me as a consumer customer on, okay, you can only have, one person in the house. If there's other people, please keep them in the other room. Here's what we're going to do to keep our employees safe. We ask that you do these things, right? Wear your mask all the time. And we're also going to be much better about scheduling, meaning it's going to be a 2-hour block. And as our driver is ready to start heading to your home, we're going to message you, text message you and let you know that he's on his way. So you can prepare for all the things that we just described, right? Make sure you're the only one in the house, et cetera. And I loved the fact that that pivot happened, right? Because from an experience perspective, I didn't like we'll be there on Tuesday. Well, what time? No, Tuesday. It's like, okay, that's not a great experience. Or even the 12 to 5 block, a 2, 4, 5-hour block was never good. If we were all not at home, you had to stay home that day, but now that everyone's home, so I'd say that I've loved to watch those things happen, or appointments when, you want to go into a retailer and they're asking you to make an appointment. So the experience is better, or, so I'd say that I've loved to see the kinds of investments that were really focused on safety and well-being of the employees, but also of the customers. And I'm excited to see how those things may in fact stick, as we start to come out the other side of this.
Yeah, I can absolutely relate with the love to that. Over communication is key. And I've had that same scenario sometimes where we're getting this delivered sometime Tuesday, and we just sit around all day, and it happens at the end of the day. That sort of over communication has been a nice benefit for sure. Dreamforce 2021 just ended. You have any highlights you'd like to share?
Well, it was the first Dreamforce I physically have not been at.
Mm,
I attended 10 Dreamforces as a Gartner research fellow, covering obviously Salesforce. And so I was there for a decade. And then, now since being here, I had been there for four, so almost, 14 years running in
mm,
person. And then this time, everything was virtual for me. Although I participated in a number of things, it wasn't live in San Francisco for me anyway. We had people there, but I was not one of them. And so what was exciting for me to see was how everyone was so excited to be back face to face. I mean, I think that was
yeah,
really important, kind of getting the community of our Trailblazers and the Ohana right back together again. But there were some really great announcements as well as how we see this new hybrid work from anywhere, success from anywhere world happening,
mm,
leveled on this foundation of technology that is much more flexible and responsive and predictive, really leaning into things like Einstein artificial intelligence and machine learning, because I think a lot of it has been in the works. But I
right.
think people were resistant to some of the actual process and people changes that needed to happen with some of the technology we have been deploying over the last, 5 or 6 years. And now with the pandemic, it kind of forced their hand to say, nope, we need to do this. And the acceleration of that transformation has been apparent
Mm,
in new customers as well as existing. And so I was just excited to see the excitement actually, and
right.
humans sort of interacting in a safe and in a safe way. So that for me was really my big takeaway that, it is possible and I'm looking forward to getting back to it.
Yes, there's been a plethora of jokes, an abundance of jokes about the sort of confirmation you might need on your outfit before you go to such events after staying home for a year and a half in sweatpants, right? I actually had a lot of that from my own colleagues. Nervousness about how to dress for things again that are now in person, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I have the obligatory, I'm sort of in a suit shirt up here, I'm
yeah,
wearing Lululemons and Adidas
yeah.
below, right?
Same.
So, not that would probably be much different, but yes, it's definitely a waist up kind of attire over the last 18 months.
Right. Now, you've said if your metrics don't look at the customer, they're missing the full picture. And this is related to sales leaders and the need to measure and track both productivity and customer satisfaction. I'll ask why you feel this is important, and how do you get the two to coexist and perform on the same grounds?
Well, prior to being at Salesforce, as I mentioned, I was a research fellow at Gartner, and I was part of the team that made the prediction that the chief marketing officer would spend more on tech than the chief information officer. And it was like
Mm,
we had said that there was three heads, running down the street, right? People were like, absolutely no way. But what happened as a result of that is Salesforce, Microsoft, SAP, Oracle, they all went out and bought technology that satisfied what the CMO was going to need if in fact that was going to be true. And we knew it was around customer experience becoming this new battleground, right? Of thinking about the experience that a customer has with a brand is as important as the products and services being sold. And while we knew it wasn't reality back then, it was sort of in 2000 and maybe nine that we said that we knew that eventually it would get to a point where that was going to be level, right? The experience that a customer had alongside the products and services being sold.
mm,
And since being here, we've seen from our research that was sort of 88% now at this point sort of feel that way. And pre-pandemic, we were expecting that would level off around 2025. So the power of understanding the experience that a customer has with you beyond just the human. It could be the user interface, it could be the ease of opening a ticket, it could be the
mm,
FAQs, right? It could be what we were just describing, like, are you communicating that the driver's on the way, right? A 2 hour
right.
window. And when people used to say, I don't, I want to Uberize my business, which was sort of the in fashion thing to say sort of 8 or 9 years ago, that was what it was really about, right? A very seamless experience of ordering something, getting a service, knowing where it is, being able to be flexible and paying for it, having it hit your expense report, all with
Mm,
one click, right? It took a lot of friction out, which is why the taxi business couldn't keep pace because the friction and ease and experience was way above what you were getting from a taxi. So thinking about how do you level that across every other business, that really lands itself on this experience, right? And the only way you can do that is understanding what in fact your customers want from you.
Now, you talked about obviously how communication has evolved for some brands. So I'll ask a more general question to take a step back. How has customer service in all kind of evolved over the past last year and a half?
Yeah, I think that customer service is actually the new Salesforce, 2 words, not 1 word.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
when I say that to sales leaders, right, they sort of look at me like, "Absolutely not. There's no way that a customer service rep is gonna be a sales rep." And so I use the analogy of American football. It's the easiest thing for me to do, right? You have a running back that scores 6 points, you have a
Mm.
field goal kicker that scores 1 or 3 points. Both can win a game. Both score points. The sales rep is the running back, the customer service rep is the field goal kicker, right? That they can win the game at the end, which may mean not losing a customer, right? Retaining a customer, winning back a customer, upselling, cross selling, right? Getting those extra points on the board, if you will. And if you look at organizations, I can ask one question. Do you view your customer service organization as a cost center, or do you view it as a extension of your revenue generating engine? And if they
Mm.
say, well, it's a cost center, and they may say it's revenue generating, and I'll say, great, what's the metrics? And they'll say, okay, how many calls can we take in an hour? Are customer service reps getting off the phone in 5 minutes? What's the percentage of first time to resolution? That's all about being a cost center, right? Because those are numbers to say, based on how many calls we get, this is how many people we need. Based on that, here's what we can do. Versus saying, if we're going to serve the customer, our customer service rep may be on the phone for 15 or 20 minutes, not 3. It may
Right.
not be a one call resolution, but did they satisfy the customer's demand? And just that very simple to say pivot and very complicated statement to execute against, because that is a total mind shift. I think customer service is absolutely your ability to not only win a customer once, but it's the second and third and fourth purchase that they make that really lies in the hand of what's that extended and ongoing experience you're giving to your customers.
And Tiffani, to pivot, tell me a little bit about this new appointment economy that you've spoken about. And do you believe this appointment economy trend is here to stay in the US?
Yeah, so that goes along with what we were talking a little bit ago, right? About
Right.
how I've seen a pivot happen on just those kinds of service appointments in your home. But we're very used to appointments to go see a doctor, or to go see your dentist, right? Where you may have to make an appointment to go and do something, get your car serviced, whatever it might be. But wouldn't it be great, right? If you walked into your doctor's office and you sit there and then they're like, oh, we're running 90 minutes late. And you're just like, why couldn't you have let me know? Like, just text
Right.
message me and say, hey, I'm running 90 minutes late. Do you want us to reschedule? Yes or no? Or can you come at 3 o'clock? Yes or no? Very quickly now, why is the doctor's time not as, or more important than my time? Like, right? Time is a commodity you cannot get back. We can make more money. We can't make more time.
Mm.
So if we can get better on that appointment, what would that look like? So in the retail establishment, making an appointment to go get like buy sunglasses or, walk in to get sized, for clothes, based on what you just said, right? We've all been sitting home and not having to wear something for 18 months. Maybe you need different clothes
Yeah.
at this moment, right? And, normally you walk in, you have to find someone to help you. Wouldn't it be great if you could just say, look, I'm going to be there at 10 a.m. I want someone to help me. And you may, that might have been reserved for a high retail value customer or something like that. But now, if we could do it for everybody. So I'm going to give an example. I'm in Los Angeles, as I mentioned, and there's a very famous brand on Rodeo Drive, and I had a pen that leaked, so I had to return, go to the pen to get it serviced. I walked up, they went, "No, if you don't have an appointment, you can't come in." I'm like,
Mm.
"Okay, well, can I book an appointment?" They're like, "Yeah, next weekend. We don't have anything available today." So that wasn't a great experience, but I understood what they were trying to do. They said, look, we had to minimize how many people were in the store. We had to do this. And so, as I was making the appointment, they said, oh, listen, someone just canceled. We'll get you in. So I went in, right? And I said, now when I pick up this pen after it's been fixed, do I have to make an appointment? It was yes. So of course I do what I do. And I said, oh, do you think you're going to keep doing this because of this question you've just asked me? And what they
Mm.
said was, customers really enjoyed the one-on-one service. And the people who were just walking in to look through that may not be actually purchasing took time away from that, person behind the counter being able to serve someone who really wanted service and was going to purchase right then. So
Right.
they are actually considering to continue doing it, and they're still doing it today. There's a red rope. You can, figure it was Cartier was the brand. And so do you then say that's going to continue? It works for the people who work there to feel
Mm.
safe, right? But it also works for the customers who want that one-on-one service. And if it's really busy, you just don't get it. And also from a security standpoint, they also liked it.
Yeah, like filtering out your high value visitors and making sure that they get this sort of premium touch that they are looking for, right?
Yeah, but then you miss, right? The balance there is that okay, I might have just been a looky loo, right, walking through,
Right.
but then I decided to buy something. It might not be a
Sure.
$200,000 wedding ring or a $10,000 watch or whatever it might be, but it might be $150 something pen or whatever it might be, right? So ultimately you'll miss out on that. So what is the
Sure.
risk of you doing those two things? And how do you balance it? So maybe you do partial appointment, which is what we're seeing, and then only so many other people are allowed in. And if you reach that maximum, they stop people from coming in until someone goes out. So now you have a
Mm.
balance of appointment one-on-one. So you can schedule people accordingly, right, who work
Mm.
there, but you also allow that flexibility for somebody who just is walking by and goes, "Oh yeah, I forgot I need to do that." Because for me, if I had to have come back with that pen to get service next weekend, I might not have done it.
Exactly. Right. Now, Tiffani, it was stated at Dreamforce that the future is AI, and I want to ask, what sort of applications with AI do you see that are particularly exciting or will be impactful to the customer experience moving forward?
So I'll start with let me start with sales and then I'll work to the others. But from a
Mm.
sales perspective, I used to be a quota bearing sales rep selling technology, and then I advised some of the largest companies in the world on how to transform sales. And now I'm here, and I
Mm.
can say that no time ever in my selling career have I felt more excited about the opportunity for sellers to take advantage of the power of what AI can deliver to them. So instead of calling 100 people every day and saying, 10 might call me back, or 100 emails or 100 touches, whatever you're going to do, but kind of cold connection. And 10 will call me back and two will make a meeting and I might close one, sort of the numbers game of selling. Instead, saying, here are the 10 that are more likely to do something with you based on their
Mm.
behavior over the last 6 months or year as it looks across other customers that looked similar to them, right? And said, I can give you these insights. Here's what I think you should do next. Okay, Mr. or Miss Salesperson, let me push this forward to you and call these 10. There's so much power behind that, but a seller actually has to trust the data and has to be willing to input data so that the data can then be analyzed, right? So it could start to give those kinds of predictions and analytics. Because unfortunately, 66% of a seller's time is still spent on non selling activities.
Mm.
And day one of a quarter, 54% expect to miss quota. So those numbers have a ton of room for improvement. So AI can really help there, and that's just kind of one example. There's a lot more. In service, it could be this. Remember, overnight you had call centers where people were sitting in cubicles with desktops, and overnight there is no call center. They didn't have notebooks or laptops to bring home. They
Mm.
didn't have access to be able to work from anywhere. So overnight, those call centers got into this loop of no response, right? It was just this ring, 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 or we're not available. We're really sorry. Now, while everybody understood, how quickly can you turn that corner? And this is where AI and bots could be like, do you have a simple question? Let us push you to FAQs. Let us answer that for you. Kind of the very basic transactional answers. So AI on
Mm.
the customer service side. And then from a marketing perspective, same thing. What's the right message for the right customer at the right time? And potentially even with the right offer.
Mm.
Those three things alone, right? It's about trying to use the data and intelligence to let people be more effective day to day. And especially when it comes to generating revenue in those three divisions and organizations I just mentioned, right? Sales, service, and marketing. A lot of that is this redundant tasks that we do day in and day out. And if we could take some of that off the plate to give some of that time back to do the actual job and generate revenue, I think everyone will be better off for it.
Absolutely. And as a former sales rep myself, I can definitely say narrowing that list down to 10 to start with that sort of insight, that would be hugely impactful. right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's crazy, right, Terrence? I mean, think about it. I got trained on the call 100 people, 10 call you back in
Yeah.
1995.
Yep.
Like literally, we've been doing this for a minute.
Mm,
And back then, I was doing it with a single user version of Act or a single user version of Goldmine, an Excel spreadsheet, an actual Rolodex on my desk. And I would
yep.
spin it, and wherever it stopped, that's who I'd call. And I was hitting quota then. Imagine if you took advantage of all the technology had to offer today, what you
Right.
could do with those kinds of numbers. But it requires sellers to trust it and not feel like
Yeah.
it's meant to replace them. It is not. It is meant to augment, their skills and bring those insights that will bring value to customers.
And now, in your best-selling book, Growth IQ, you stress the importance of customer experience for a growth strategy. Would you say that that's the exact same now, more important now after the pandemic?
That's such a great question. So, Growth IQ was a culmination of me taking growth strategies that have been used for the last long time,
Mm,
sort of 50, 60, 70, 80 years, and modernizing them with social, mobile, cloud, big data as kind of four big anchor examples. And those strategies that I outlined in the book were nothing new, but now, just like what we were just talking about, right? Using AI to be responsive, trying to create this appointment economy or, distributed and partnering in order, instead of building yourself, right? Partner to deliver, whatever the answer might be. But I started out, my very first path was customer experience. And I
mm,
said, look, you should put customers at the center of every decision that you make. And over the last 5 years, I'd say that I did a little bit of a disservice in saying that. That to me, I've now shifted to saying employee first and customer centricity.
mm.
That your customers, the fastest way to get customers to love your brand is to get employees to love their job. They'll deliver a better service as a call center rep. They'll, spend the time to be more insightful as a sales rep. They'll be more inclusive as a marketer, right? As a product developer, they're innovating and they're happier, right? They're putting products out that they really love. And then the result of that is that customers have a better experience, right?
Right.
The sum of a business is the people. The people are the ones that create the experience, whether that's a technology experience, a human experience, or a blend of the two. So I would say to you that I think that yes, experience is still very important, and being customer centric is very important, and leading and understanding the value of experience. But you have to start with your people. I'll give one stat. We did a MuleSoft study that said the average enterprise had 900 applications and only 27% of them were integrated. So,
Mm,
as an employee, imagine how many things I have to log into to give a customer a good experience.
right.
Or as a seller, right? If 66% of my time is spent on non selling activities, it's usually because I'm doing a lot of stuff in a lot of different systems. So, even something integrating systems to allow the people, right, to be able to be faster in response times, right? More
Mm.
agile in what they do each day, and then obviously more insightful in adding value. So I would say to you, yes, I believe being customer centric is very important, but I believe you have to start with your people and making sure they have what they need in order to do their job and serve the customers appropriately. So I've made a little bit of a shift, right? And so much so that we've done new research around this. We've pushed out that we found that companies that do those two things really well actually grow 1.8x faster than brands that don't. So for $1 billion company, it's a $40 million impact, right? Strong employee satisfaction, strong customer experience, faster growth rates.
As a consumer, if you don't mind me asking, have you been, as it pertains to the employee experience spilling over to the customer experience, have you been impressed by any particular brands?
Well, what's interesting, especially during the pandemic, is how have they treated their employees over the last 18
Right.
months? What have they done? Right. And even now getting back to work and hybrid, are they saying, nope, you have to be back at the office. There is no choice. Right.
Mm,
Or, oh, you have to be vaccinated, or there's no choice, or nope, we're not going to do this. And, whatever it might be, like, how are they treating employees during this time? And
mm.
also, how are they treating customers during this time? And those two things will have long lasting implications to what consumers in the market think of them as well. We have this great resignation happening now, right? Employees
Right.
are reevaluating what they're doing. And if you don't have anyone in the call center, your call times are going to go up. If you don't have anybody working the drive-through, your drive-through lines are going to get longer. If you don't have anybody to, fix those cars, then people have a bad experience. So you
Mm.
have to start there. So I'd say that those that have really listened to employees, and then action some of the things that they said. I happen to work for an amazing brand, an amazing CEO who is all about the employee,
Mm.
and all about the customer. And there are others, obviously, but I think that you have to look out for those two things. And when people are looking to work somewhere, they want to know that, hey, you're going to take care of me, right? You care about me. And as a customer, do you take care of your people? Do you care about the environment? Will you care about me if I have a problem? And so I
Right.
think the game has changed, if you will. And so I think it's important for executives to apply the lens that they did to customer to employee as well.
Tiffani, to keep moving along, because I don't want to steal too much of your time, I know that, well, obviously, excuse me, it was made incredibly clear that brands, especially when the pandemic first initiated, really March of last year, brands needed to have digital first buying experiences, right? Everyone was stuck on their couch, stuck at home, and they were transitioning to this new way of buying for some. But we saw obviously what happened. E-com exploded. Now, on that note, what would you share with leaders on things you recommend them being aware of or creating when they're designing these new digital first buying experiences?
So I would say stay close to the customer and understanding what they want. I'm
Mm.
just gonna give Salesforce as an example. When the pandemic first hit, it was sort of April, May of 2020, and our year started February 1st, right? So the strategy was rolled out February 1st, boom, like 7 weeks later, the pandemic hits, right?
Yeah.
And Mark Benioff, our CEO, gave us a challenge for 1 million conversations, not 1 million sales calls, not 1 million demos, not 1 million RFP responses, 1 million conversations. It was programmatized. So it wasn't like, hey, just call your customer and say, hey, how you doing? It was obviously programmatized. We captured all that information back. And out of that came the launch of 6 new products, work.com. We really started talking about success from anywhere. How can our
Mm.
technology help people get back to the office safely, which now obviously everyone's in the middle of. And that came from customer conversations. Simultaneously, we were doing the same thing with employees. What do you need? How are you feeling? What's going on? And from that, we have standing all hands calls with our entire executive team and sometimes our entire board of directors once a week. And we're going to continue doing it. We've been doing it for 18 months. We have something called Be Well twice a week, right? It's all about wellness and mental health, giving everyone a half hour, no meetings Thursdays, and a Wellness Friday once a month. The first time we did that Wellness Friday, everyone was still sending emails.
Yeah.
Now, a year later, it's like crickets on Friday. It's wonderful when that one Friday happens. And so that's just two examples. So I'd say if you're looking to move to digital first, talk to your customers. If you're looking to move to digital first, talk to your employees and figure out what both need and what success looks like for them, so that you can be responsive. Now, you're not going to hit everything that they all want, but mind you, out of that million conversations, we've now to date done almost 7 million conversations.
Mm.
And from an employee standpoint, we hit a wall of burnout towards the tail end Q3 of last year. We did a lot of these things around the wellness Fridays, and we've seen it come back. But if you weren't paying attention, we would have had a huge attrit as well. But we acquired Slack. We've onboarded some 10,000 new employees. Like lots of things have happened, and we've still remained sort of a great place to work. So
Mm.
I'd say that having those conversations requires effort, as well as vision and direction and transparency and vulnerability to ask, how can we help and what can we do? And there's no greater insight than those two conversations.
All right, Tiffani, our last question to tidy up, putting the customer at the center of your growth strategy. How have customer relations channels, excuse me, evolved recently? And how do you believe these channels can be a part of an effective growth strategy?
Yeah, I think this is different based on the size of the company, because if you're talking to a really small business and go, look, there's an explosion of channels by which your customers can talk to you. There's like 20 channels. People are like, like I can barely handle phone and email. Like, and now you're
Mm.
telling me I have to worry about Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and, Slack and WhatsApp and whatever. Like, I can't do it. So I think that this goes back to understanding where are your customers? How do they want to communicate with you in what digital channels? And if you're
Mm,
going to add a digital channel, make sure it does not impact the experience that they have in the other channels, or that you're not doing it to just check the box, that they are really going to have a high level of service from you in that way. And if you have to keep it a narrow set of channels, going back to what we were just talking about a little bit ago, that's where AI could really help you to maybe expand that channel. So even if you are on social media and an AI responds, and then if it gets to a level, the AI says, we'll open a ticket for you and have someone call you, right? So you're still in that channel, but maybe it's not humans, monitoring it, that you're using AI to do it. So I think it's different based on size. I think it's different based on industry. And if you're in a regulated industry, that's even different. But I would say to you, I don't know the answer.
mm.
You should know the answer based on who's your customer, what's your vertical in industry, what size are you, what can you handle with a level of service that you feel represents your brand, and never compromise on that, even if it means saying you're not everywhere. If you're going to be where you're going to be, make sure it's a great experience.
Well, Tiffani, thank you so much for the time. It was an absolute pleasure. And I appreciate you running us through putting the customer at the center of your growth strategy. Any closing last words of wisdom?
No, I just appreciate the time. Look, I always love talking about customers. And, if you're a leader or an individual contributor and you're wondering what the future will look like for you and your
Mm.
company, this is where you going out and having those conversations is just invaluable information. So pick up that phone, set up a Zoom, send an email, get more connected and closer to your customers so that you can anticipate what they're going to want next.
Wonderful. Tiffani Bova, Global Growth Evangelist at Salesforce, author of best-selling book Growth IQ, and host of What's Next with Tiffani Bova, an all-time best-selling podcast. Tiffani, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Terrence.